Two little girls cried over a sink full of dishes, their hands raw, their hearts broken. What they didn't know, their father was just minutes away. The kitchen was dim and cold. The only sound echoing through the room was the endless clatter of dishes. Emma, 10 years old, stood on a small wooden stool, struggling to keep her balance as she scrubbed another greasy plate. Her younger sister Lily, barely 7, stood beside her, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, tears mixing with soap bubbles. The smell of leftover food and detergent filled the air, and the little hands that should have been holding dolls were trembling under the weight of heavy pans. "Not clean enough!" Their stepmother's sharp voice cut through the silence. Her name was Vanessa, a woman who wore expensive clothes but carried no warmth in her heart. She walked across the tiled floor, her heels clicking like little hammers of authority. She picked up one of the dishes Emma had washed, turned it toward the light, and smirked. "You call this clean? Pathetic. You'll wash all 300 tonight." Emma froze, looking at the mountain of dirty dishes still left on the counter. 300? She whispered, her eyes widening in disbelief. Lily sniffled, her tiny voice shaking. "Please, ma'am. We're hungry. Can we just eat something first?" But Vanessa slammed the dish into the sink, splashing soapy water onto their faces. "You'll eat when every single plate is spotless. Now stop crying and work faster," she shouted, turning toward the door. Her perfume lingered in the air long after she left, but her kindness didn't. For a moment, the kitchen was silent again, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the quiet sobs of the girls. Lily wiped her tears with her wet sleeve. "Emma, I can't do this anymore," she whispered, her small shoulders shaking. Emma bit her lip, trying to be strong. "We have to, Lily," she said softly. "If we don't, she'll yell again." She handed her sister a clean towel and forced a weak smile. "It's okay. Daddy will come home soon. He promised he'd be back today." The mention of their father gave them a flicker of hope. Their dad, Mr. Bennett, was a kind and loving man, a self-made millionaire who had built his fortune with honesty and hard work. But business had kept him away for weeks, leaving his daughters in the care of the woman he trusted, Vanessa. What he didn't know was that behind his back, Vanessa treated the girls like unwanted guests in their own home. As hours passed, the sink never seemed to empty. The clock struck 9, and the girls' arms ached. Their eyes burned from exhaustion. Lily tried to keep her hands steady, but the soap slipped and a plate shattered on the floor. The sound startled her. "I'm sorry," she cried, stepping back in fear. The kitchen door swung open. Vanessa stormed in, her eyes cold and cruel. "What did you do?" she yelled, grabbing Lily by the arm. Emma jumped between them. "It was an accident! Please don't hurt her!" But Vanessa pushed her aside. "You little brats think you can do whatever you want because your father spoils you. Not in my house," she hissed, her voice dripping with bitterness. She looked at the clock and smirked. "You have 1 hour. If I come back and these aren't all clean, you'll both sleep outside. Understood?" The girls nodded silently, tears streaming down their faces. When Vanessa left again, Emma knelt beside Lily, hugging her tight. "It's okay. Don't cry, please. We'll finish it together." She picked up the broken pieces of the plate, careful not to cut herself. "Remember how Daddy used to say, bad days don't last forever? We just have to be strong until morning." Lily nodded, her small voice barely a whisper. "I miss him, Emma. I miss Daddy so much." Emma smiled weakly. "Me too, but he'll come back. He always keeps his word." The night grew colder, the rain outside tapped against the windows, and thunder rolled in the distance. Every few minutes, lightning flashed across the room, lighting up their tear-streaked faces. They kept scrubbing, their tiny fingers pruning from the water. Emma's stomach growled, and Lily swayed on her feet. "I feel dizzy," Lily murmured. Emma quickly steadied her. "Sit for a minute, I'll do the rest." But even Emma's body was giving up. Her hands were red and sore, her back ached, and every blink felt heavy. Just then, the sound of a car engine rumbled outside. The girls didn't notice it at first, too tired to think. But then they heard the familiar creak of the front gate, the slam of a car door, and footsteps approaching the house. Emma froze, her heart skipping a beat. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Lily's eyes widened. "It sounds like Daddy." Their hearts raced, a mixture of hope and disbelief flooding their tired bodies. Inside the grand hall, Mr. Bennet stepped in, shaking off his wet coat. He had just returned from an overseas meeting, exhausted but eager to surprise his daughters. He smiled faintly, imagining their little feet running toward him like they always did. But the house was silent. No laughter, no joy, just the faint clinking of dishes coming from the kitchen. His smile faded. Something felt wrong. He followed the sound quietly, his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor. When he reached the kitchen door, he stopped, his heart clenched at the sight before him. His two daughters, the light of his life, stood half asleep at the sink, their hair messy, faces pale, eyes filled with tears. The sink was overflowing with dishes, and their small hands were red and raw. Emma tried to stand straight when she saw him, but stumbled from exhaustion. Lily turned slowly, her lips trembling. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice breaking. He froze, guilt and anger surging through him like fire. "My God, what happened to you?" he said, rushing toward them. Both girls burst into tears, running into his arms. "She made us wash all the dishes, Daddy," Lily sobbed. "She said we couldn't eat until we finished." Emma clung to him, her tears soaking his shirt. "We tried to be good, Daddy. We really did." Mr. Bennet's eyes darkened. He turned toward the doorway just as Vanessa appeared, startled to see him home early. "Oh, darling, you're home," she said, forcing a nervous smile. "I was just teaching them some responsibility." He looked at her, his expression unreadable but his voice calm and cold. Responsibility or cruelty? The silence that followed was heavy. The rain outside grew louder, echoing his rage. His daughters clung tighter to him as he stood tall, a storm of emotion brewing behind his calm gaze. He said nothing more, but in that moment Vanessa knew. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. And in that silent kitchen, for the first time in weeks, the girls finally felt safe. Their father had come home. Headlights cut through the rain that night, as the mansion gates opened with a slow creak. The car rolled in, tires splashing through puddles, the engine humming softly against the sound of thunder. Inside sat Mr. Bennet, a man who had everything: wealth, power, respect, but whose heart had been aching for weeks. His daughters, Emma and Lily, were his world, the reason behind every late-night meeting and every business decision. He had promised them he would return early this month, bringing gifts and stories from his travels. He imagined their laughter echoing through the halls, their tiny footsteps rushing to greet him at the door. That thought alone made his tired face soften with a smile. But as the car came to a stop and the driver stepped out with an umbrella, something didn't feel right. The house was dark. No lights in the living room, no warm glow from the windows, no sign of excitement. It was as if the mansion had lost its soul. Mr. Bennet walked toward the front door, rain dripping from his coat, his heart beginning to pound. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. Silence. "No, Daddy!" No running feet, just the faint ticking of the grand clock in the hall. His brows furrowed. "Emma? Lily?" he called softly, expecting little voices to answer, but only the echo of his voice came back. Then he heard it. The soft, rhythmic clinking of dishes. The sound came from the kitchen, faint but constant. Clink, splash, clink. His steps quickened. As he walked closer, he heard muffled sobs mixed with the sound of water running. When he reached the doorway and pushed it open, his world stopped. His daughters were standing at the sink, surrounded by towers of dirty dishes that reached almost to their shoulders. The floor was wet, soap bubbles clung to their arms, and their faces were streaked with tears. Their tiny bodies trembled with exhaustion. Emma's fingers were red and swollen. Lily's eyes were barely open, her lips pale. For a moment, he couldn't move. His heart twisted painfully in his chest. "Emma, Lily," he whispered, his voice trembling. The girls froze. Lily turned first, her small face lighting up with shock and relief. "Daddy!" she cried, running toward him. Emma followed, dropping the sponge from her tired hand. "Daddy, you came!" He dropped to his knees, opening his arms as both girls crashed into him, sobbing uncontrollably. He held them tight, his coat getting soaked with their tears. "What happened to you? Why are you like this?" he asked softly, his voice cracking. Lily could barely speak through her sobs. She made us wash all the dishes, she said. We weren't allowed to eat until we finished. Emma clung to him harder, whispering, "We missed you so much, Daddy." Mr. Bennet's eyes burned with tears. He stroked their hair, kissing their foreheads again and again. "I'm so sorry, my angels," he said, his voice breaking. "You'll never go through this again. Never." Then came the sound of footsteps behind him. He looked up slowly, still holding his daughters. Vanessa stood at the door, wearing a silk robe and holding a glass of wine. Her face was pale when she realized he was home. "Oh, darling," she stammered, forcing a smile. "You're early. I didn't expect you tonight." Mr. Bennet rose to his feet, his expression hardening. "Clearly," he said quietly, his tone cold. "What is the meaning of this?" She blinked innocently, trying to keep her composure. "Oh, this?" she said, gesturing carelessly toward the sink. "They were just helping with the dishes. You know how children need discipline." His jaw tightened. "Discipline?" he repeated. "You call this discipline?" He pointed toward the sink. "Their hands are bleeding, Vanessa. They haven't eaten and it's almost midnight." Her smile faltered. "You don't understand," she said quickly. "They disobeyed me. I was only trying to teach them respect." But he stepped closer, his voice rising, not with anger but with pain. "Respect isn't built through cruelty. You don't teach love by making children suffer. You teach it by showing them what love feels like." His words struck her silent. The thunder outside rumbled again, echoing the fury in his heart. He looked down at his daughters, still clinging to his legs, and something inside him shifted. All the long hours at work, all the missed dinners and video calls. Suddenly it all felt meaningless. He had been building an empire but losing the very reason he started it. He looked back at Vanessa, his decision clear in his eyes. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "You're leaving tonight." She blinked, shocked. "What? You can't be serious." "I said pack your things," he repeated, this time with finality. "You've lost every right to this home the moment you hurt them." Vanessa's eyes filled with panic. "You can't just throw me out! After everything you've done to them?" he snapped, cutting her off. "You're lucky I'm not calling the police. Get out!" The strength in his voice left no room for argument. She turned, her face twisting with rage, and stormed upstairs. Moments later, the sound of luggage dragging echoed through the hallway. Mr. Bennet didn't move until he heard the front door slam shut. Then the silence returned. But this time, it was peaceful. He knelt again, pulling Emma and Lily close, both of them trembling from fear and cold. "You're safe now," he whispered. "Daddy's here." He carried them upstairs, one in each arm, into their warm bedroom. He helped them change into clean pajamas, wiped their tears, and tucked them into bed. He sat beside them, holding their hands as they drifted into sleep. Every few minutes, one of them stirred, whispering his name, just to make sure he was really there. And each time he smiled softly and whispered back, "I'm not going anywhere." As the night grew quieter, Mr. Bennet sat by their bedside, watching their tiny chests rise and fall. He looked out the window at the rain still pouring outside. His heart was heavy, but also filled with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. He realized that no wealth, no deal, no success could ever match the feeling of having his daughters safe in his arms. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about work, deadlines, or board meetings. He was just a father, sitting beside the two people who mattered most. Downstairs, the kitchen still bore the chaos of the night. Broken plates, spilled water, and half-cleaned dishes. But in that mess, something beautiful had returned. The warmth of family, the sound of love breathing again after weeks of silence. Before heading to bed, Mr. Bennet cleaned the last plate himself, slowly and carefully, as if erasing every trace of pain his daughters had endured. Then he turned off the lights, whispering to himself, "No one will ever hurt my angels again." That night, the storm outside finally calmed, and so did the storm inside the Bennet home. Love had returned, not in the form of riches or grand gestures, but in the simple promise of a father's protection and two little girls sleeping safely under his care.